group of students trek through the woods and uncover something that they shouldn't have. A group of friends from a party they are having, but end up in the middle of a monster attack. The final moments of a group of documentarians are captured on tape, at the whims of a cannibalistic tribe in the Amazon rainforest. What is the commonality between all three of these? They are all recorded. Fiction that lives its narrative as if it was reality is nothing new as of today, with one of the most earliest examples being the War of the Worlds radio drama adaptation by Orson Welles in 1938. In fact, there's a whole subgenre that plays into this. Found footage, specifically found footage horror. Genres and subgenres are notoriously difficult to pin down in any case, and found footage is similarly difficult. If I were to describe found footage as a subgenre of the camera as its own diegetic entity, the Deadpool films would count as found footage, which is not true under any stretch of the imagination. It also can't be defined using its amateur presentation, as that would exclude films such as Lake Mungo and Grave Encounters, which are both presented as documentaries. Journalist Scott Meslow, however, argues that found footage is built, quote, on the deceit that the movie was filmed not by a traditional omniscient director, but by a character that exists within the film's world. You can see this in a lot of films and subgenres such as Cloverfield, The Sacrament, and of course, the Blair Witch Project. The Blair Witch Project is a found footage horror film released in 1999 that, despite not being the first found footage horror, that honour belongs to Cannibal Holocaust, which was released almost 20 years prior, but was the most successful and profitable found footage horror film for around 15 years after its release. Not only was its premise and framing unique for the time, the way the actors are filmed had a lot more in common with documentary filmmaking than fiction, focusing more on the actors' genuine reactions to the crew's unseen interference on set. In addition to the viral marketing technique of interactive websites and the posturing of the three Sioux stars as filmmakers, going so far as to use their real names in the film completely destabilised audience perception of the film as either real or fake, never giving away if the film was real or not. It's safe to say that the film was an absolute smash hit. So Hollywood obviously capitalised on it by doing absolutely nothing? Is that true? Yeah. Despite the success of the Blair Witch Project, it would be 9 years until another film of its ilk to reach similar success would be released in cinemas. In the interim, however, internet shock sites such as Ogrish, later known as LiveLeak, would arise from the darker parts of the internet. These sites would host videos, usually showing some sort of gruesome death for anyone to see. A feat that, quote, was a long-standing goal for documentary image makers and a widespread desire of audiences in the pre-digital period. Images like this, despite being nothing new, became significantly more accessible and easy to view due to the rising accessibility of the internet and videos coming up out of Iraq post 9/11. I argue that these images and videos recontextualize what audiences saw as real. Videos of Ground Zero of the towers falling, on-the-ground footage was captured by journalists. Random videos uploaded on the internet during the early to mid-2000s, and documentaries were often shaky, uneven, or peaking audio at times. Even more unfortunately, a sizable portion of the videos were recorded by killers and murderers, such as the murder of journalist Daniel Pearl. This idea of a serial killer recording their crimes would eventually find its way to the big screen in the Poughkeepsie tapes. Long-style shots of the killer mentally and physically torturing his victims, demeaning them, often in seductive, evocative ways, evoke the images of real-life Snuff videos as, quote, a common assumption regarding Snuff is that it combines explicit images of mutilation and defilement with hardcore sex. It is most likely because of this realism, however, that it was pulled from release, bar a single theatre in Mexico. This was most likely not alleviated by the fact that the director leaned into the idea that the film was a legitimate documentary during the marketing. This effect of audiences viewing found footage and found horrors in general as more real is described by Peter Turner. Quote, "When the spectator is attentive to the construction of the film and alert to the fact that the character is aware of the camera's presence, it can make the didactic events appear more like mediated reality." Reviews from IMDb are quite mixed, to say the least, with an overall rating of 5.9 stars out of 10 on the website. I noticed a trend, however, with reviews either lauding the gratuitous scenes of murder or saying that they were unrealistic and have seen worse. In a recent review from uberschluss.com, for example, the film was praised for its realism, and the article calls it, quote, "one of the most authentic found footage horrors they've come across." In many ways, the Poughkeepsie tapes is a response to the Blair Witch Project, in the sense that it takes a lot of the aspects that Blair Witch codified and changed them to varying degrees of success. For example, Poughkeepsie does away with the vaguely supernatural and folkloric trappings of Blair Witch for the very real aesthetics of Snuff and the fear of serial killers, going so far as to use real cases as inspiration. The modus operandi of the Water Street Butcher is also realistic in the sense that he falls into real-world psychological dynamics real-world serial killers are likely to fall into, whereas Blair Witch uses the unknown and unseen as a way to scare the viewer. Poughkeepsie draws its own horror from the long and unrelenting takes of psychological torment. I argue that the disparity between these two films that were made within the same 10 years is emblematic of a shift in pop culture pertaining to the accessibility of violence and violent imagery. The Blair Witch Project, again, shies away from explicit imagery like you would see in a Snuff film. Not to say that Snuff didn't exist before the film was made, but merely that shock videos were not as easy to come across. Around the intended release of the Poughkeepsie tapes, however, shock videos were significantly more easy to find and popular. In fact, according to Google Trends, Ogrish as a search term reached the height of its popularity in December 2006. This link to Snuff films can also be seen in the actual nature of the tapes, with most of them having some kind of sexual undertone, or even overtone in some cases, like how a lot of Snuff is made for some form of sexual pleasure. The general ubiquity of Snuff films and shock videos during the 2000s is evident in the codes and conventions that Poughkeepsie tapes use, even if it didn't get a wide release. In 2010, 3 years after the Poughkeepsie tapes were released, videos of a man smothering and asphyxiating kittens and other small animals circulated online. This man, who I will not name for moral reasons, ends up murdering Jun Lin in an attempt to become infamous. Whilst an extreme example, this is merely one of the cases that someone recording themselves killing something or someone for either notoriety or amusement shows the trope is definitely based in reality. With films like Spree being made to this day, it is clear that this trend is far, far from over.